Thank you, Laura, for joining us or joining me for this conversation. I really appreciate your getting together and having a little chat about the Composers Conference. I was wondering if you could start by telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do before we move on to the conference.
Yes, thank you. I love talking about the conference. It's one of the most fun things that I do in my life, and or at least for the last 3 years, that was the first time that I discovered it. I live in Belmont. I'm a physician, as is my husband, who has also started to come to the conference. And we have 4 kids, and they've played a lot of music when they grew up. So there was always music in the house, and I began to study the French horn in 2014 when our youngest daughter went off to college. She's a French horn player, and she had a great teacher, and this was my empty nest sort of thing that I wanted to do. So I started to take lessons, and when I was looking for a summer experience, somewhere in the back of my mind, because I had gone to Wellesley College as an undergrad, I remember hearing that there was some chamber music experience that was there in the summer, and I just Googled it, and up it popped, and I was so grateful to be allowed to participate because I had really just started the horn, and what I stumbled on that summer was a component of the program for the chamber music component, which was what was called a boot camp. And it was designed for people who had never played chamber music before or needed to have some review of the essential elements. And so for 3 days, we had different excerpts that were illustrative of different components of playing chamber music, and not just chamber music. This applies to all music, things like intonation and phrasing and balance and articulation and rhythm. So that was really a fantastic kind of introductory course to chamber music. And I was a clarinetist through college, and then hadn't played for a while. So, but I did mainly orchestral playing and wind ensemble playing. And people always said, playing chamber music is such an intimate thing. You really have to listen to other people. You have to pay attention. Everyone has a important role. You can't just sit in back of the section and kind of move your fingers along the keys. It's not going to work. So, and so this boot camp really helped to define all those essential elements that you would want to work towards as a musician. And so, and then the following summer, we did a large ensemble of the Mozart Serenade, number 12, which was
Yeah.
well, these are led by Isabel Plaster, who is just such a great teacher. And it was she who ran the boot camp. And then the following summer, this was last summer, we did the Dvorak Wind Serenade.
I remember that.
In D minor. And that had 3 horns in it, along with, it was a big group. It was a cello and bass and contrabassoon and 2 bassoons, oboes, and clarinets. So that was really quite a work. And it's just magical. We only had 3 days to put it together.
Oh,
And
wow.
3 days is not a long time by the end of it, you're only beginning to explore it as a work. But that was really just such a thrill to be part of that that group. And all along, the teachers that lead your chamber music ensembles, and most people will have about 2 works that they're working on during the 3-day cycle of each week. And these are fantastic teachers. They're excellent musicians. They have absolutely no they they accept what the musicians are able to do. They offer very high standards if you want to take things to the next level. They're so understanding, and it's really a pleasure to be listening to these people as they're leading your chamber music group, and then at night hearing them perform on their own instrument, and you realize what exceptional musicians they are, and to have someone with their understanding helping you understand a phrase in whatever work you're working on is really a great thrill.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
And
I have a really quick question for you,
yeah,
which is, I mean, I think it's fascinating. So you mentioned you played clarinet
yeah,
years ago, and then you weren't playing for a long time, and then after your youngest child left home, you decided to pick up the French horn. She had been playing the French horn. I mean,
yeah,
the French horn is notorious as being like perhaps the single most difficult instrument to learn.
right.
Was it just something that you just were like, I love the French horn. Did it not even like, did that even cross your mind, or was it just? I mean, you said you have a great teacher, but I mean, it's just such an interesting choice.
Right. So
The French horn.
I always liked brass instruments, and if the truth be told, when I was in third or fourth grade and I was deciding what instrument to play, I have two older brothers. One played the trombone, one played the trumpet, and I hate to say it, but back in those days, this was probably 1964 or so. Girls didn't play brass instruments,
Oh,
and
I see.
there was absolutely no reason why I couldn't. It just, there were kind of roles assigned to different instruments.
Sure.
For some reason, I hadn't explored the French horn, which probably, would have been fine then, but it's anyway, I decided on the clarinet, and but I think that so with the clarinet, there's unique fingerings for each note. You just kind of position your fingers, and if your embouchure is in the right place, and if you take a deep enough breath, and it's at the right time, you play the right note. So in the French horn, it's completely different. If you can't hear what the pitch is, your chance of hitting it is going to be vastly reduced, because tiny differences in embouchure can make the difference between, let's say, an E, first line E, and second line G. And so it is a challenge. But it's forced me, I think, to pay attention to what the music says rather than just reading the music. You kind of have to hear it.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, when you were talking about the boot camp and that first time going and then experiencing the boot camp, I thought, gosh, to be in like a chamber music boot camp, but also to be playing horn in a chamber music boot camp, it's like that's that's like an intense amount of that's a real learning curve. So it must have really had a strong impact on you. I mean, it seems to have made a really strong impact on you.
Yeah, and again, the people in the master classes that were associated with the boot camp were just so understanding. I mean, there was they were glad that we were trying to learn, and everything was accepted, and there was no note that was a wrong note. It was something that you could think about in a different way, and why don't you try this? And I played in college. I was in the MIT Wind Ensemble for a while. And then when I went to medical school, I didn't have a whole lot of time. But I was always playing with our kids, because they all studied piano, and then they could choose whatever instrument they wanted. So we had the house was very busy with music, because there was a violinist and two trumpeters and a French horn. And we were, I would accompany them on the piano and listen to them practice. So I kind of felt like I knew how it should sound. That was an advantage I had when I tried to pick it up. So music was always, we did a lot of music, and the kids played in, we're fortunate in our town to have a very strong school music program. And then the kids also played in the at that time, Greater Boston Youth Symphony Orchestra and over at NEC.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a full rehearsal and concert schedule. It just wasn't my schedule at that time.
I see. It sounds a little bit, I mean, I didn't realize you also accompanied them on the piano, so you played piano as well, it sounds.
Yeah, so I played piano for 8 years, and I think I stopped sometime in high school, which I never should have. It's hard to play two instruments seriously, though.
Sure.
And so, but yeah, I still like to play piano. Before this pandemic arrived, I was thinking about, playing, really concentrating on my French horn if I wasn't working anymore. And so we'll have to rethink that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Understood. So you brought up the conference, discovering the conference several years ago. It sounds like you were at the conference when it was at Wellesley still.
The last year that it was at Wellesley was 2017, and that was my first year at the conference. So then the next 2 summers, 2018 and 2019, were at Brandeis, right?
Very good. And I was wondering if you could maybe talk about a singular experience, if there is one that sort of stands out as being sort of meaningful, important to you, or emblematic in some way about the conference.
Yeah, I think it would have to be the large ensemble performances, and I think the most recent one that we did was the Dvorak, and that was just such a great musical experience because we could learn about the composer, and there were 3 horns in that piece, and some difficult passages. And again, if we only had more time, three days isn't quite long enough to bring that together. Yeah. But musically, it is such a great piece, and I think that we only just began to understand it. I wish we had more time with it.
I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about something that you sort of look forward to or excites you about the conference as we move forward. I know that Jessica has been sort of amazing in the way that she organizes the chamber music workshop. I think she's an inspiration to us all in her vision and execution of that part of the conference.
She is full of joy, and it is contagious. And yes. Well, I mean, again, not to focus on the pandemic, but I think it has redefined how people play music together. And I think that short of just playing in your own house by yourself, I think chamber music is a great possibility for people who want to play together but need to be socially distant. I have a couple of brass groups that I play with, and since things have started to open up, we've just been playing in people's driveways, 6 feet apart, and neighbors who come by and hear it are just longing for live music because no one has heard it for several months. So I think that if people have to be distant when they play, chamber music could still be played outside. And so maybe this will bring about a new venue for chamber music, not inside in a chamber, but, garden music outside in someone's backyard.
Right.
Or at Brandeis under a big tent outside.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I just hope it's still possible to play.
Well, thank you so much. This was great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's really nice to talk to you, and I look forward to the conference in a couple of weeks.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it all happening. Everyone's been working really hard to make it happen, and I think it's going to be super. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you again.
thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.